My name is James, and I have dedicated more than 2 decades of my life to serving as a pastor, guiding, counseling, and shepherding my congregation through both joyous and challenging times. That night, I had been driving home later than usual, the highway stretching endlessly ahead, bathed in the dim, flickering glow of my headlights. The world around me was unnervingly quiet, almost unsettling in its stillness. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the engine beneath me and the intermittent flash of streetlights casting brief, fleeting shadows over the asphalt. My mind was heavy, weighed down by the burdens of the past week, sermons I needed to prepare, counseling sessions with members of my church who were struggling, and the constant, gnawing worry for the well-being of every soul in my care. The world outside my car window seemed to teeter on the brink of chaos, a reality I felt more acutely than ever before. People were restless, anxious, angry, and increasingly divided. It felt as though a shadow was creeping over everything I had worked to nurture, and no matter how fervently I prayed, that shadow seemed to linger, persistent and unyielding. The road was empty, almost deserted, and I felt the tension in my shoulders ease slightly as I exhaled deeply, telling myself that home was just a few more miles away. But then, without any warning, a violent, sudden jolt rocked the car. The steering wheel ripped hard from my hands, and before I could even gather my thoughts, the vehicle swerved uncontrollably. A deafening explosion tore through the quiet night air. The tire had blown out. My grip on the wheel tightened instinctively, but it was already too late. The car spun wildly, heart pounding in my chest as I struggled to regain control. The asphalt vanished beneath me in a dizzying blur, and within seconds, I felt the world tip and lurch violently as I left the road entirely. The sickening crunch of metal twisting, the sudden sensation of weightlessness, the rush of cold night air as my car plunged off the embankment, all happened in an instant, faster than I could comprehend. Then came the impact. The car smashed into something solid, and water surged around me from every side. I was submerged before I even realized it, darkness swallowing everything. The icy cold gripped my body, my lungs screamed for air, and yet in that moment, I felt neither pain nor struggle. I simply existed, suspended in a strange, timeless state. When I finally opened my eyes, I was no longer in my car, no longer anywhere recognizable. It wasn't darkness, but it wasn't light either. It was something entirely different, a vast, absolute stillness stretching infinitely in every direction. The silence around me was not empty, it was full, as though it carried a presence or weight I could not yet comprehend. I felt no fear, but I wasn't sure if fear was the appropriate response. The strangest realization, the one that struck me more profoundly than anything else, was that I was aware, fully aware. I could think, I could feel, I was neither asleep nor dreaming. And then it hit me. I wasn't breathing. Panic, logically, should have surged through me. But instead, there was peace, a calm so profound I had never experienced in my entire life. No pain, no struggle, only an undeniable awareness that I had crossed into something beyond the bounds of the world I had always known. My body, my car, the road I had just driven, they all felt distant, almost irrelevant, like remnants of a life that no longer applied to me. And then I saw him. A presence emerged, solid yet transcendent, and before I could even process it, I knew who it was. There was no doubt, no hesitation. Even without seeing his face fully, even without any words, I knew it was Jesus. Just the thought of his name sent a surge of indescribable energy through me. Power, authority, love, and an almost palpable sense of expectation. He wasn't merely standing there. He was waiting, patient, and commanding in a way that made the air itself feel alive. I had spent my entire life preaching about him, teaching others about his love, guiding people toward his grace, yet standing there face to face with him, I realized how little I truly understood. His presence was overwhelming, yet it did not crush me. It lifted me, enveloped me, surrounded me in a warmth that was felt rather than touched. My knees buckled, and I fell before him, not from fear or obligation, but because there was no other response possible. Words failed me, they seemed utterly inadequate. Then he looked at me, not a glance, not a passing look, but a gaze that penetrated the very depths of my soul. In that moment, I felt every sin, every failure, every hidden fear, and every secret regret laid bare, yet within that same look, there was no condemnation, only truth. I felt an overwhelming urge to weep, to rejoice, to understand why I was here, what had happened, and what would come next. Then Jesus spoke. One word, simple yet heavier than anything I had ever heard: come. In that instant, I understood that this was just the beginning of something far greater than I could have imagined. He reached out his hand, and I took it without hesitation. The moment our fingers touched, everything changed. There was no movement as I had ever known it, no steps, no effort, no sense of travel. Yet suddenly, we were elsewhere. The air was different, pure, vibrating with a presence beyond comprehension. I felt lighter, as if every burden, every worry, every fear I had ever carried had been stripped from me. My feet touched a surface solid, yet unlike any earth I had known. It was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced, yet shimmering with a life of its own. Then I saw them. People, radiant and filled with a joy so deep it almost overwhelmed me to witness. Their faces bore no sorrow, no trace of pain, no hint of fear. Some ran in exhilaration, others knelt in worship. Some simply existed in a state of peace so profound it made my heart ache. I knew immediately where I was. This was heaven. Tears sprang to my eyes as I took in the beauty surrounding me. Colors were richer than anything on earth. The air seemed to pulse with life, and every sound was a perfect, harmonious note in an endless melody. Nearby, a river flowed with waters so pure they seemed like liquid light, and trees stretched skyward toward a luminous expanse without a sun, bathed in a radiance that had no visible source yet illuminated everything effortlessly. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling, and he nodded in affirmation. I looked back at the people. Some I recognized. Cherished members of my congregation, a dear friend long past, and a woman whose life had been a testament to faith and service. Their faces radiated joy, their eyes fixed entirely on Jesus, worshiping him with every fiber of their being. Yet even amidst this beauty and awe, a weight pressed against my heart, a heaviness I could not immediately place, a reminder that even in paradise, understanding is a journey. There weren't nearly as many people as I had anticipated. I turned once more toward Jesus, and before I could even form a single question on my lips, he spoke, his voice calm yet piercing. Many believe they are walking the correct path, yet they are profoundly deceived. His words struck me like the force of a hammer upon steel. My heart constricted as I scanned the crowd once more, taking in every face, every name, and feeling the heavy absence of those I had expected to see but found missing. My mind raced, spinning with unanswered questions. Where had they gone? Jesus laid a hand gently upon my shoulder, and the touch carried a weight that was at once comforting and convicting. You have preached my name. You have guided many toward me, yet understand this. Not everyone who calls me Lord truly knows me. I swallowed hard, my throat tight, but I whispered internally, they come to church, they worship, they observe the rituals, they follow the rules. Jesus' voice, now tinged with sorrow, cut through my thoughts. They may appear faithful, but their hearts are distant from me. The gravity of his words pressed down on me like an unyielding stone. I reflected on all the people I had known who claimed faith, yet lived as if I were merely an idea, a story, not a living presence. People who spoke my name with ease but never surrendered their lives to me. People who built their existence around comfort, routine, success, ambition, yet whose hearts remained far from me. A burning question gnawed at my mind, heavy and unavoidable. I did not want to ask it, yet I could not resist. Then where are they? Jesus did not answer at once. His gaze drifted past me, fixed on something beyond the limits of my sight. His face bore a grief I could scarcely comprehend. After a moment that felt eternal, he returned his eyes to me, his voice calm, deliberate. Let me show you something else. Suddenly, the radiant beauty of heaven vanished, as if it had been a thin illusion. I did not feel myself move, yet I found myself somewhere entirely different. The warmth and light of paradise were replaced by a chilling stillness that constricted my chest. I looked around, and my heart sank. The world appeared familiar yet distorted, cloaked in a darkness that was not merely physical but spiritual, an oppressive heaviness that seeped into everything like a silent, pervasive fog. Jesus stood beside me, his expression solemn. Look, he said, and then I saw. People walked the streets with vacant eyes, trapped in their own isolated worlds, faces illuminated by screens, ears filled with ceaseless noise, minds consumed with distractions, leaving no room for truth. Arguments erupted over trivialities, families fractured under the weight of hatred. Pride, greed, selfish ambition consumed countless hearts. Even those claiming righteousness who wore their faith like armor were ensnared in deception. I turned and looked upon grand churches filled with thousands of people, yet an unease settled over me. The sermons were eloquent, polished, flowing smoothly from the lips of preachers admired by many, yet their words carried no transformative power. They spoke my name, yet I was absent from their hearts. My stomach churned as the realization struck. People were being entertained, not transformed. The truth had been diluted, made comfortable, palatable. I saw preachers more concerned with applause than souls, leaders who spoke of blessings but never repentance, of prosperity but never sacrifice. They have constructed kingdoms for themselves, Jesus said, but not for me. My gaze shifted to political leaders, influencers, celebrities, voices shaping nations. Some claimed righteousness, some even invoked my name. Yet beneath the polished words and promises lay deceit, manipulation, darkness masquerading as wisdom. People followed blindly, convinced of their path, yet oblivious to the truth. Jesus said, "The world is being led astray." I clenched my fists, desperate. Why don't they see it? Why don't they know? He met my gaze and said, "They do not seek me. They seek their own desires, their own version of truth, their own paths, and thus they remain blind." Tears stung my eyes as I observed humanity marching toward destruction, oblivious, unconcerned. They laughed, celebrated, chased hollow desires, oblivious to the shadow lurking ever near. Movements claiming justice were fueled by rage, governments promising peace thrived on control, and division tore through every corner of society. People attacked one another, hatred spreading like wildfire, tearing families and friendships apart. An unseen force orchestrated the chaos, ancient, malevolent, and relentless. Then Jesus spoke again, his voice steady, chilling in its certainty. And if this continues, he said, this is what will come next. The world shifted violently before my eyes. Cities burned, nations crumbled into chaos, people cried out in terror, their pleas drowned in the deafening roar of violence. Leaders, familiar and unfamiliar, spoke with authority, yet their words were hollow. Promises of peace rang empty, solutions offered only exacerbated the despair. The populace clung desperately to hope, but all they found was ruin. Disasters struck without warning, earthquakes splitting the ground, floods swallowing entire towns, fire consuming forests, winds tearing through homes as if the planet itself cried out in anguish. The sky darkened, storms raged, and yet people did not perceive, did not understand. Blame was cast upon governments, nature, one another, but never heaven. I turned to Jesus, my voice barely a whisper. Why is this happening? His eyes, filled with sorrow, answered before words did. Because they have turned away. Families once strong were fractured. Parents and children no longer spoke. Husbands and wives grew strangers to one another. Friendships dissolved into hatred. Pride, greed, fear, and selfishness had consumed humanity. Love had grown cold. Everyone stood against each other, arguing, fighting, accusing. Even those who professed to follow Jesus waged endless debates while the world disintegrated around them. The sight left me trembling, a profound ache in my soul, knowing that the course humanity had chosen had led them far from the light, into a darkness of their own making. And then I witnessed something that made my stomach knot, a heavy, twisting feeling that seemed to sink straight into my chest. The church was empty, utterly silent. The echo of footsteps was the only sound, a hollow reminder of what had once been a place of worship, of joy, of communal devotion. The doors were shut. The pulpit stood abandoned, its wood weathered and cold. The fire that had once burned brightly in the hearts of the faithful had long since been extinguished, and the light that once filled these sacred halls had dimmed to a faint, flickering glow. Some churches still remained standing, but they were shadows of what they had been. They preached messages that comforted the ears, but starved the soul. Truth had been replaced with palatable illusions, with ideas that were easy to accept, safe to follow, and shallow enough not to challenge the heart. The cross had been traded for self, the call to sacrifice replaced by the lure of personal gain. I turned to Jesus, my chest tightening with panic, a surge of desperation coursing through me. Is there no hope left? I silently asked, my voice caught somewhere between fear and yearning. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked not at me, but through me, beyond me. I followed his gaze, and what I saw next stole the very air from my lungs. Amid the ruins, amid the chaos and despair, there was light. It did not shine from the powerful, the famous, or the loud voices of the world. It came from small, hidden corners, unnoticed places, humble acts of devotion. I saw people kneeling in earnest prayer, hearts open, broken, and sincere. I saw families returning to God, choosing love over bitterness, mercy over judgment. I saw gatherings of believers, not in grand cathedrals, not under gilded ceilings, but in living rooms, in quiet homes, in secret spaces, worshiping with a flame that could not be quenched by the darkness around them. Jesus' voice broke the silence, steady and calm. It is not too late. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of hope press against my ribs. Then what must we do? I asked, my voice trembling with anticipation and doubt. He turned to me, his eyes a mixture of sorrow and unwavering certainty. The world, he said, searches for answers in all the wrong places. People look to leaders, to governments, to movements, but they do not look to me. His words struck deep, reverberating through the chambers of my mind. I had watched, year after year, as people pinned their faith on politics, believing that the right leader could fix what was broken. And now I understood, this battle was never political. No law, no ruler, no human authority could change what truly needed to be healed. I swallowed, trembling. Then what is the answer? Jesus spoke with unwavering clarity. Prayer, unity, true faith. So simple in words, yet so complex in execution. I had witnessed the division firsthand, even among those who called themselves Christians, fighting over opinions, over doctrines, over trivialities, while the world sank deeper into darkness. I hesitated. Why do so many struggle to believe, even those devoted to faith? Jesus looked past me, as if peering into the hearts of every living soul. The enemy's greatest weapon, he said, is distraction. Not force, but subtle whispers, comforts, endless noise, things that seem harmless, yet devour time, focus, and devotion. I thought of the people I had seen, consumed by screens, endlessly chasing success, money, influence. Even within the church, people were distracted, lost to busyness and comfort. Jesus continued, the church was meant to be a house of prayer, a sanctuary where hearts seek me above all else. But many had turned it into a stage, a theater for performance, seeking applause instead of my presence. The weight of his words pressed down on my soul. I had seen it myself. Churches obsessed with numbers, sermons crafted to entertain rather than convict, worship designed to dazzle rather than transform. Yet it is not too late, Jesus said. For those who humble themselves, who return to me, not to religion, not to rituals, but to me, hope still remains. A fire ignited within me, fierce and uncontainable. Then we must tell them, we must awaken them, I said, my voice trembling with urgency. Jesus nodded, though his expression remained solemn. Before you return, he said, there is something else you need to see. Suddenly, the world around me shifted. I saw churches brimming with people, hands lifted, voices raised in song. At first glance, it appeared as revival, as thriving faith. But soon I realized something was terribly wrong. The focus was not on Jesus. It had shifted to pastors, influencers, leaders, their names brighter than the truth they preached. Their words were smooth, their messages carefully polished to soothe ears, but they lacked substance. They spoke in my name, Jesus said, sorrow heavy in his voice, yet they do not know me. Closer inspection revealed a troubling pattern. People drawn not by repentance, not by the gospel's call, but by promises of wealth, success, and power. Preachers had turned faith into a tool for personal gain, twisting the message of God to bless their own plans. Sin was ignored, the cross replaced by self-interest. They do not point to me, Jesus continued. They point to themselves. I saw some leaders amassing millions of followers, their influence spreading far beyond their churches. Not merely pastors, but celebrities cloaked in faith, celebrated not for truth, but for comfort. Jesus showed me more, spiritual voices offering light, love, energy, yet rejecting the cross, blending truth with deception just enough to mislead, to keep hearts distant from the salvation found only in him. These are false prophets, he said. They instruct people to embrace the world rather than deny themselves. Blindly, people follow, believing themselves safe, yet straying far from the only path that leads to salvation. My soul ached with the weight of this reality. Then who will warn them? I asked, voice trembling. Jesus looked at me, eyes shining with urgency and hope. There are still those who will listen, and you must tell them. Jesus lifted his hand, and the perspective shifted. I saw the true battlefield, Not one of guns or armies, but an invisible war for souls. Darkness. Darkness crept like fog, seeping into homes, hearts, and churches. Yet in the midst of it, light shone, not from the powerful, not from the famous, but from prayer. Real, heartfelt prayer that reached God, shaking the foundations of darkness. Families fell to their knees, crying out to Jesus, and the enemy's grip broke. Hidden gatherings of believers lifted hands in worship, and chains shattered. Where there was prayer, there was power. Prayer, Jesus said, is not ritual, not performance. It is a weapon, a direct connection to my Father. Yet so many neglect it, praying only when they want something, treating God as a distant visitor. The enemy does not fear empty words, but when my people pray with love, faith, and unity, his plans crumble. I watched as true love transformed communities, hatred replaced by peace, broken marriages restored, divided churches united, hearts and lives reshaped, one act of devotion at a time. The enemy thrives on division, Jesus had said, because in every space where there is division, weakness inevitably takes root and spreads. Yet in contrast, where there is love, genuine, God-given love, my power is made strong and unstoppable. In that moment, I understood more clearly than ever before just how much of the world's suffering stems from the absence of true love, the love that flows directly from God. People wander endlessly, searching, yearning, desperately attempting to fill the emptiness within them with everything except the one thing that could truly bring healing and restoration. Tears welled up in my eyes as the weight of this reality pressed down on me. What must we do, I thought, overwhelmed by the enormity of the need? Jesus looked at me with eyes full of compassion. His words were simple, yet they carried a depth and authority far beyond anything I had ever experienced. Pray, love, and teach others to do the same, he instructed. Then he paused, the weight of his next words settling in my soul. Now, it is time for you to return. I gasped for air as my eyes flew open, the harsh, sterile glow of the hospital lights stabbing at my vision. My chest felt tight and heavy, my body weak and trembling, yet the most incredible truth washed over me. I was alive. Voices filled the room, the familiar and beloved sounds of my wife, my children, and my closest friends. Their faces were pale with worry, etched with the fear of loss, yet as soon as they saw me awake, relief flickered across their features like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Hands gripped mine tightly, murmurs of "thank God" and "we thought we lost you" circling me in a whirlwind of emotion. I tried to speak, but my throat was parched. My words caught somewhere between my heart and my lips. Everything felt surreal. My mind raced uncontrollably, questioning the reality of what had just occurred. Had it really happened? Had I truly stood before Jesus, seen heaven itself witness the darkness that consumes the world? I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me like a tidal wave, each vision, each word, each revelation hitting me with undeniable truth. It had all been real. A nurse gently checked my vitals while doctors whispered quietly to one another, but their words barely registered. My heart burned with a single urgent truth. I had been entrusted with a message, a warning, and I could not remain silent. Days passed. My strength slowly returned, but sleep eluded me. Every time my eyes closed, the visions Jesus had shown me replayed with vivid clarity. I knew, with unwavering certainty, what I had to do. The following Sunday, I stood before my congregation. The church was full. Some had come out of curiosity, others drawn by the whispers of my miraculous recovery. I inhaled deeply and shared everything. At first, silence reigned. Some leaned forward, hanging on every word, while others shifted uneasily, skepticism clouding their faces. Yet even in that quiet, I could sense change taking root. The truth I spoke of began piercing through the fog of distraction and deception. I spoke openly about the distractions of the world, the false prophets, the transformative power of prayer and love. I revealed how the enemy kept them blind, even within the church itself, and I spared nothing. Tears glistened in some eyes as they nodded in understanding, while others whispered amongst themselves, uncertain. Then a profound shift occurred. A man in the front row fell to his knees, weeping. A woman lifted her hands, crying out to God. It felt as though a veil had been lifted, hearts awakening to truths long ignored. In that moment, I understood with absolute clarity. This was only the beginning. Now the real challenge begins. I stood at the pulpit, gazing at the faces of those gathered before me. Some were still in shock, others openly weeping. A few sat rigidly with arms crossed, skeptical but unable to ignore the words they had just heard. I did not return to convince anyone. I had returned to deliver truth. The visions I had witnessed were not for me alone, not for my congregation alone. They were for the entire world. The world is asleep, I declared, my voice steady and resonant. We are distracted, caught up in trivialities, while the enemy operates unseen, quietly influencing, diverting, and deceiving. We have replaced the eternal truths of God with comfort, entertainment, and empty promises, and now we stand at a decisive turning point. The weight of the moment pressed down upon me like never before. The message Jesus had entrusted me to deliver weighed heavy on my soul. Deception is rampant. False teachers, false prophets, false faith. People follow leaders, ideologies, politics, wealth, and fame, hoping these things will save them, yet none can. The enemy has blinded countless souls, diverting attention from what truly matters, an intimate, unbroken relationship with Christ. I watched faces, noting nods of agreement, heads bowed in contemplation. What happens next, I continued, is entirely up to us, for Jesus did not merely reveal the problem, he revealed the solution. Stepping forward, I gripped the edge of the pulpit with determined strength. The solution is not found in politicians, in fleeting movements, in social media debates, or in the temporary distractions of this world. The solution lies in prayer, faith, love, and unity in Christ. A profound silence fell over the room, every ear attentive. The enemy seeks to divide us, I said, for where there is division, there is weakness. Where there is hatred, destruction reigns. But where there is love, real love, the divine love that emanates solely from God, the enemy is rendered powerless. I scanned the crowd, seeing faces I had known for years. Mothers, fathers, youth, children, the elderly. Some of you feel something stirring right now, I said. Some of you feel the rekindling of a fire in your hearts, the awakening of truths you have suppressed for far too long. Do not ignore it. God is calling you back. I observed a man gripping his wife's hand, a teenage boy brushing tears from his eyes, a mother pulling her child close, whispering a quiet prayer. Yet I also recognized a sobering reality. Not everyone would hear. Some would shift uncomfortably, some would look away, some would leave, dismissing it as merely a near-death experience, a hallucination, or an insignificant story. That, I warned, is precisely what the enemy desires. But for those who truly hear this message, for those who recognize its truth, I continued, exhaling slowly, my voice both steady and urgent. We are living in the final moments, yet it is not too late. We must return to Jesus before it is too late. A hush fell over the church, as if the very air waited. Then, one by one, hearts responded. Some knelt where they stood, some whispered heartfelt cries of repentance, and others embraced loved ones, tears streaming freely. For the first time in a long time, I felt a shift, not merely in that church, but in the unseen spiritual realm. I did not know what would happen next, nor how many would truly change, nor how many would hold steadfast to this message. But one truth was undeniable. I had completed the task for which I had been sent back. Now, the choice rested with them. Spread this message, share it widely, so that more souls might awaken to the truth. The time is urgent, the stakes are eternal, and the call is clear.